The collapse of the East African community in 1977 brought about a lot of tension, especially between Kenya and Tanzania. The two countries started viewing each other with a lot of suspicion. But today, we're seeing a re-emergence of the new ties between the two countries. But the question is, will the newfound love between Kenya and Tanzania succeed where it failed in 1977?
From the start, the East African community was meant to fail. It was not sculptured to adapt to the changing trends in the world. It is said that the EAC bloc was formed to counter the influence of colonialists who were ceding power after years of dominance. After independence, individual countries got busy consolidating power, giving affairs of the bloc less prominence. Kenya's founding president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, was intent on making sure that the country stuck to capitalism. Tanzania, on the other hand, championed for Ujamaa, a major African socialist policy. A clash of ideologies was imminent here. But the Ugandan coup of 1971 was the last nail on the coffin of EAC then. In 1977, the EAC was dissolved and Kenya and Tanzania ended diplomatic ties, only to re-establish them in 1983. The next 23 years, the three countries would spend their energy trying to revive the bloc. On the 7th of July, the year 2000, Tanzania and Kenya, along with Uganda, re-established the EAC. However, the Kenya and Tanzanian tension lingered on even with the new bloc. According to policy analyst Dr. Keret Mutua, the differences between the two countries was more imagined than real.
These are perceptions. Maybe what we need to do is stop speaking about them and actually just say we are friends. And if those in the political realm begin to discuss the friendship and what can happen, I think we move away from the distraction of the ambiguous animosity that we seem to talk about, but we don't really tangibly see.
Why should we look at it as a problem? I think we shouldn't. We should look at it as a strength and say to ourselves, we too can play a similar role with the Tanzanians. We don't come with that historical story that the ANC and CCM have, but we're their neighbors. We're right next door. And you know, increasingly, we've got to stop thinking nationally. We've got to think as a region as a whole.
Though the two countries have differed on many fronts and many issues, there has been a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations to try and make the relationship between the two countries work, according to economic analyst Ali Kansachi. Last year, Tanzania became the largest export destination of Kenyan goods within East Africa, selling goods worth 48 billion shillings, according to data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, from 39 billion shillings in the year 2011.
I would give credit to private sector who have gone there even with a very hostile environment and started to show that their investment does help to create jobs for Tanzanians and to develop. And the government itself has continued to push for realignment of Tanzania with the rest of the community countries.
It is not yet clear how the thawing of relations between Kenya and Tanzania will unsettle the rest of the East African member states. Dr. Keret says that when all the countries within the bloc are in harmony, growth will be accelerated.
Tanzania would be strengthened by having Kenya next to it. Already we can see, if you're in Mombasa, you see lots of goods coming into Tanzania, into Kenya. And that already shows a strong union. And that's even informal sometimes.
This is a case of win-win. We both win. Kenya is an investor in Africa. We are aggressive in the region. And you know, regional investment is something that is to be encouraged. Regional investors understand the markets, they're close to the ground, they know what's going on. This is good investment. So, first of all, we're a big investor.
The just concluded visit by Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete has aroused optimism that finally Kenya and Tanzania can now speak with one language, according to industrialist and investor Chris Kirubi.
Our president, over the time he's been the president, he's done a lot to rebuild the relationship between us and the neighbors.
However, Ali Kansachi says that Tanzania still has some work to do to ease cross-border trade in the region.
What both presidents were saying, they were lifting the veil and saying, look at these numbers. These numbers are telling us that there's a lot going on. We have a close symbiotic relationship. We are close, and I think that's what's going to drive us closer into each other's arms.
Well, the latest attempt by Kenya and Tanzania to solidify their political and business ties is likely to unsettle the East African community. And the question is, who is likely to be the biggest beneficiary in this newfound love between Kenya and Tanzania? And that is a question that has eluded very many people, including those who claim to be in the know.
Another issue that is cropping is the looming change of guard in Tanzania through the general elections slated to take place later this month.
A country and a government is bigger than a person and should always be bigger than a person. The minute we make national governments about people, I think we go into a big era.
All I've heard from the incoming Tanzanian CCM candidate has been extremely positive, and I think he is a champion of the EAC as well. He is a champion of infrastructure.
The jury is still out on whether Tanzania, which is a member of the Southern Africa Development Community, will have a softer spot for EAC over SADC.